All right, welcome to class 6. I will try to make this lecture as short as possible because I know these aren't particularly fun to watch. Plus, I didn't or listen to. I didn't really make any graphics here, so lo siento. All right, visual hierarchy. You are probably already familiar with this. Obviously, it's the idea that you try to create an organization of the elements of your page, so that a whoever's viewing it will look at certain elements, and then certain elements will have a importance, and then they will then look at the next important element and the next important element. But one of the things that we talk about with usability is that you are trying to, in this case, think about it like this: you're trying to save us pre-processing, meaning you're not asking the user to try and organize and figure out what you're saying. You're trying to make it as easy for them to digest as possible. All right, so you're trying to give them their medicine, and you're going to make it cherry flavor, so that way they aren't disgusted. Um, so the major three rules here that you will see is that the more important, the more prominent, right? It's pretty obvious. Things that are logically together should be related visually as well, right? So if you have a picture and then you have a description of the picture, obviously put those things next to each other. And also, when possible, try to nest things visually. And what I mean by that is that you try to group them around, like you might use a border, or you might use a similar color, or you try to use you try to have them appear basically as sub elements of a larger element. You want to avoid visual noise. There are basically three kinds: shouting, where all the items are screaming for attention. So obviously, not everything can be important. This is one of the common things you'll see with like products and stuff. Like red sticks out the most, but if everybody uses red, then your product doesn't stick out. Everybody's trying to get attention. So you have to try to, make some things have less attention. Only make the most important thing. Disorganization, make sure that things are not all over the place. The use of grids is always a good way of helping to organize your information. Clutter, where there's just too many things, right? So try to, if you can help it, limit the number of elements in an area. Okay, so typically what that means for an app design is that you would make a much larger vertical composition. So you'd have them scroll instead of having so many elements horizontally, because that way there'll be fewer elements for them to look at, and then they could just keep scrolling and get the rest of the elements. Or you'd have subpages and such. When you make your links, make sure they're obvious, and give guidance if possible, right? So first, make it brief. You want the smallest amount of information that will help them. If you make them overly elaborate, then that actually makes it more like muddled and hard to understand. Only place them really when you need them. So timely, and also make them unavoidable. You want to make sure that people do see them, that they know that is a link that they can use. So you want to make it obvious. A good example is, I'm sure you've seen some door handles where they're just like it'll be like one of those straight ones, and you don't know whether you're supposed to pull it or push it. You should make it obvious that it is a push or a pull, door handle. All right. You want to minimize text. So people are scanners. They're only going to scan what they see. So make sure that you try to, keep it minimal. Avoid floating headlines. What that means basically is that this is a headline. This is actually not a good example. This has a headline, and see how there's a bit of a gap here between this and this area here. It's the same size almost as this. This is slightly larger than this is. It'd be better if this was actually a little bit closer, or the gap here was a little bit larger, because that would give it a better idea of them being combined. Keep paragraphs short. Don't write long, huge. We're not writing a book. People won't read them. Okay. Bolted lists are really popular these days. I notice, like, you guys probably don't go on Yahoo because you're not old, but when I go on like Yahoo articles and stuff, there'll be this, they'll say, oh, somebody did something. And then you go in the article and they'll actually have like 3 bullet points of the article, basically just describing what the whole article is in those bullet points. So you don't even have to read the article, which I think is, I don't know if it just shows how lazy we are, but also that is what people want. They're just generally trying to get right to the information. Another thing that is also good is to highlight key terms. So if you know that people are going to go to your site and look for very specific things, like if you're selling 80s t-shirts, then you'd want to make sure that you would like, put a lot of keywords of like popular 80s themed things, because they're going to be looking for something in that realm. So you can do things to try and make those pop. It also helps with SEO, search engine optimization, that when people are going into Google or Bing or whatever their search engine is, I mean, it's Google, right? They're going to look for those words. You want to make sure that those words are present in your application or website. Omit extra text. So what we mean by that is you want to say, welcome, this is the greatest thing ever. We really pride ourselves on all this stuff, and we blah, 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 blah. They don't want that whole big, long intro. They don't. So what you want to do is just say, hey, we make this. Ours is different because of this. You want to get kind of to the point. Don't do this extra stuff just as filler. It's not good. People aren't going to read it, and they'll actually, for one, they won't read it, and second, it'll be a turnoff because it'll make a longer paragraph, and then they'll just avoid it altogether. So basically, happy talk, right? So self-congratulatory. Here you go. That sort of thing. Avoid instructions. Make sure you don't read them. I'm sure, anytime I ever buy any sort of product, they have instructions with them. I almost never read them. I'll read instructions when I'm putting together IKEA furniture, because there's really not any other way to put those things together. But if it's something like a vacuum or something, I just skip it, because people aren't the use of it should be self-evident. It should be obvious how it is meant to be used. Okay. If you have to have instructions for your interface, then your interface is not generally working. So let's talk about the home page. Sometimes this is called the landing page. But what this is basically the page that if you go to a website, it's the first thing you see. And it's usually the starting point. Okay. The interesting thing now is that it used to be that people would go on the internet and they would type in a very specific website that, oh, I want to go to this website. And then that's where you'd go. Now I would say that more often than not, people are usually searching for something, and they'll be brought to a page that's usually a sub page, and because they're looking for something specifically. But inevitably, oftentimes they will back up to the homepage. So even if they aren't landing on the homepage like they're supposed to, they will be returning to it at some point. Okay. So typically the content you're going to see in a homepage is going to be the site identity and mission. So basically the name of the website, and usually, what we would call the strap line in the previous thing, right? So if you look at my site, right, it'll say teach me cone, teach me. That's my tagline, right? There'll be a site hierarchy. So what the organization, what have you. Oftentimes there is a search that's really common. I might put search in my website. I currently don't have one. Teases, things that they're doing, they're trying to draw you into other stuff that might be interesting to you. You can read through this, but usually these are the elements that you'll typically find in a website. They don't, most times they will not, I mean, almost all times, they will not have all of these things. They'll have these top ones typically, and then as you go down, these become less and less common. If you have all of these, like for instance, like this Yahoo kind of does, it's very busy, right? It's a very busy site. It's too busy. So, but that's the typical content you would see. You want to make sure that the main thing you do is try to convey the big picture, right? When you have your homepage, the whole idea is you really want to get the idea of like, hey, this is what we do, and this is what's important. So if you look at Kickstarter, is a great example because that's Kickstarter, and then it has creative work that shows help funding here. But the big thing they kind of show is like, look how many projects are backed, how much money we've made, and that's the best advertisement that they could do to try and be like, hey, look, this is what, and it's very minimal too. So that works really well. So navigation. So obviously you need to have some sort of menu system. So typically if I was going to a store, right, I'd walk into the store in the front door or whatever, and then I would be able to see every aisle has, a description of what's the category of things that are in that aisle. and then I would go down that aisle, and then things would be sort of organized that all lights will be near each other, and I'd walk in and I'd grab those things. But see, there's a physicality there that we don't have when you're working virtually. You can't see across multiple aisles. We can't go from point A to point B and walk physically to that location. So instead, we're relying on a menu system. So it has to have a sort of organization and a hierarchy that makes sense, that people can navigate. Okay. So like I said, there's no sense of scale. We don't know. One of the problems is, like, I might click on an element and a page, and I have no idea how many things are in that page. If I was in a store, I could see, like, wow, this is a really long aisle. There's no sense of direction, again, because there's no physicality and there's no location. So we're not like in one place versus another. The primary purpose of navigation is obviously direct users to the pages. Other things that you want to do is let them know where they are. So not only what pages are available, but what page they currently are on is definitely super helpful. It should give us a general idea of how to use the site, and it should give people confidence. Everything that you make should give you confidence about the company or the product or service that you are at. Okay, because if they don't have confidence in it, they will not put their money in it, and they will go somewhere else. So some formatting, just clear, simple, and consistent. You want to. You may notice that pretty much all websites will have the same menu on every single page, because it's just consistent. They understand it, they see it, and then they can navigate, and they're not suddenly like feeling like they're in a different place all of a sudden. You don't want them to feel lost. You can ask these questions. What page is this? Read the thing here. I don't feel like me talking about is going to be super helpful for you. But okay. So the lab today is going to be to do an app page design. So last week, what you did is you created in Photoshop. You created a mock layout of what your app was going to look like. This week, what you're going to do is you're actually going to utilize Adobe XD. Okay, so you can just follow this video tutorials here. Sorry if they're a little bit long. You're going to bring in your materials, and then you are going to make a home page and 2 sub pages. I would like it for this, don't follow mine exactly, just like yours wasn't exactly before, but hopefully this is broad enough that you can get an idea of how it works, and you'll be able to navigate and interact with the software. It's easier than other pieces of software. So it's easier in Photoshop. It's definitely easier in Photoshop, easier than Illustrator. It's kind of like InDesign, but it's simpler than InDesign as well. So because it's kind of a page layout sort of thing, but a digital page layout. All right, so just get that lab done, and good luck.